IBM announces a plan to help New York City put solar energy on the grid. I'm Catherine Rampell, reporting for Business Day Live. Computer giant IBM says it is putting big data to work to make cities more efficient. And Mary Walsh reports on the implications of major new decisions to cut public union benefits. But first, Michael De La Merced joins us to talk about reactions to an announcement by NASDAQ yesterday. NASDAQ OMX, the company that runs the exchange, said it would pay almost $40 million to investors who said technical glitches interfered with trading during the Facebook IPO. Michael, thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
So what actually happened with the glitches in Facebook's first day of trading, and was it NASDAQ's fault?
Sure. Well, we're still several weeks out from Facebook's IPO, and we're still living with a lot of the problems. And what essentially happened is that NASDAQ had problems setting an opening price. And so when they tried to fix the problem, that ended up kicking out a lot of trades. And so for a time, people didn't know how many Facebook shares they owned, whether any orders they had to buy or sell shares went through, and it was a bit of a mess.
What was the scale of the losses?
Some trading firms estimate that the losses could amount to 100 million or more.
And this was a $40 million offer, basically.
Right. So what NASDAQ is offering is about $40 million. Some of that is going to be cash, and some of that's going to be basically rebates to the trading firms. And it's also important to remember that NASDAQ isn't offering this to investors directly. They're offering it to their member firms who are then supposed to pass it along to their investors.
So I can imagine that investors might be concerned about actually being properly compensated.
The reaction that we've been hearing so far has not exactly been positive to NASDAQ. We've got Knight Capital, which is one of the major trading firms, which has actually come out and said that they're disappointed in this. They said that it's not enough to cover their losses, and they really think that NASDAQ has to do a lot more.
And is this the end of the kerfuffle then? I mean, now that NASDAQ's put this on the table and all of these other parties are still unhappy?
It's not the end yet. The SEC still has to approve the cash portion of it, which is almost half of what NASDAQ is offering. And we might expect more firms beyond Knight to come out and say this is a real problem. They're not happy with this. You already have other exchanges who are unhappy with other parts of this. But in general, this has left a lot of people not feeling very satisfied with what NASDAQ's offering at the moment.
Well, thanks very much for joining us today.
Thanks, Catherine.
Tech companies can now analyze huge amounts of information about our daily lives. It's called big data, and IBM has been trying to establish itself as the leader in using big data to make cities more efficient. Reporter Louise Story sat down with Karen Parrish from IBM to discuss a joint venture here in the Big Apple. The idea, announced today, is to increase the city's use of solar energy through better use of information.
We have a solution called the Intelligent Operations Center, and it really is focused on solving some interesting problems that the city faces today around solar energy.
And so the city, with this initiative with IBM in the city, will the city be putting solar panels on homes in New York and apartment buildings?
Absolutely, that's the directive.
And will they give a cut of the money to the people who own those buildings, or how will that work?
Yeah, there are incentives out there, I'm sure, but you have to understand that organizations like Con Edison are also deeply involved in making sure that this kind of energy is more affordable. But I think the real issue for the city is to make it easier for people like you and me who live and work and play in the city to take advantage of solar energy. And one of the challenges that they had was something as simple as getting a permit was really, really hard to do.
Now you have this whole unit dedicated to helping cities all over the world.
Yes, we do.
Figure out how to use the data that they're getting in.
Yep.
And so big data, it's a catchphrase in technology. So how will you be helping the city use its data? What types of data will you use for solar energy?
Well, the Intelligent Operations Center addresses a number of forms of data. So think about satellite feeds, for instance. If you know what the weather conditions are going to be, you can be able to determine when you're going to get the greatest amount of solar energy. So that's one form of data. You also might want to look at traffic patterns because you might want to see what your carbon emission data looks like. You want to look at the solar panel panels that exist today, and you want to determine how effective are they in providing cost-effective energy.
And New York City is not looking at this data already?
Yes, but it's siloed.
And so the city doesn't have it integrated?
Not yet, not without the
And
intelligent
so this is a joint venture between the city and IBM, and ultimately you may go to other cities. Will New York City be profiting off of taking this solar solution to other cities?
That's yet to be decided. The thing that New York City that's so unique about New York City is they're really the first that's going after the solar energy problem using this kind of technology. You mentioned Rio earlier, and Rio was really focused on disaster management, making sure, yes, that's right, because they suffer from tremendous floods. And let's face it, they're going to host the World Cup, and they're also going to host the Olympics. And they want to make sure that they can handle thousands and thousands of people in an emergency management system.
And what are a couple other cities that have worked with you all on big data solutions, and what are they used for?
We worked with the city of Xinjiang in China, and they're focused on traffic patterns. You know that there's a population explosion. In fact, in most cities, there's a population explosion. Not just in China. We estimate, statistics show, that 1,000 people a day are moving.
So you hear about big data, it sounds like this abstract thing, but these are very tangible uses.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks so much for joining us.
It's my pleasure. Thanks so much.
This week, California voters elected to cut pensions for existing public workers in San Diego and San Jose. It was a tough blow for organized labor, one that may pave the way for similar changes in other states. Mary Walsh is here to discuss how events in California may set a new precedent for how public workers' benefits are protected nationwide. Hi, Mary. Thanks for joining me.
Hi.
So what has the difference been historically between how private sector pensions are protected and public sector pensions have been protected?
Yeah, it's about two different legal standards, really. The workers at companies have a federal law that protects their pensions. And in the public sector, they have usually state laws or local ordinances. Those are much more protective. It's a lot harder to reduce a public worker's benefits legally than it is for somebody in the private sector. So like a teacher has a better protection than somebody at a company.
So the idea is that whatever pension benefits you were promised when you started, that will continue through the duration of your career, as opposed to if you work at a private company, you're still guaranteed your pension benefits up until the day that they change them, but then going forward they can say, the next 15 years you're not going to get paid a pension, right?
Yes, it can be changed anytime, or it can even be stopped entirely, and no one can take away from you the benefits you've already earned. But going forward, what you would have earned had they not changed the pension plan, that's not guaranteed.
So what is unusual about these two votes? What's the significance of them?
We hadn't really heard from city taxpayers before, I don't think, on this subject, and so the public unions were sort of casting this as a middle-class issue, and that didn't resonate with property owners and people paying property taxes. We've been through a lot since 2008, and they didn't really want to participate in something that kind of ties their hands and signs them up to pay these very, very unexpected high pension costs.
Right, and to clarify, what we're talking about is that taxpayers effectively voted to stop this double standard, right? That if you're a teacher who's been working for 15 years, yes, you'll still get whatever pension benefits you were guaranteed for the last 15 years, but going forward, you'll be treated just like a private sector
Yes, and
worker.
The unions in San Jose anyway have already sued, so there will be a big court test.
So what kind of precedent could this set going forward?
It's happening in other states too. Everybody sort of has this problem. We need more money to pay these pensions than we have in pension funds. So little by little, mayors are sticking their necks out and saying, we're not going to do this after all. We're going to try to change the plan. They'll be sued, and then I think it will be lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit, very uncomfortable, and then ultimately it'll go to the U.S. Supreme Court.
And in the past, right, when these kinds of things have been litigated in the private sector, they've always ruled in favor of allowing the company to reduce benefits, right?
A company can change your pension plan at mid-career. You're not guaranteed, if you work for 30 years, you're not guaranteed 30 years worth of pension accruals at the same rate. It can change.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
That's all for today. Please stay with us online at nytimes.com for our continuing coverage of this and other stories. I'm Catherine Rampell, reporting for Business Day Live. Thanks for watching.